Shelburne, Trinity City, gonna set my soul on fire. Bows and shams got money to burn, so get those stakes up higher. Athlone and Piedmont waiting out there. Sligo and Galway, they just don't care. Waterford, Wexford and DLR. Viva Las Damas! Viva Las Damas! Viva! Viva Las Damas!
On the first Las Damas of the new season, we look back at the end of the Gleeson era and the beginning of the Carla Ward era. The Colin Healy debacle means one head must roll in Abbottstown. And we also look back at the league's off-season, as well as looking ahead to this weekend's President's Cup. And as always, we dip into the mailbag and see what the listeners have brought to the table. All this and much more on this week's Las Damas. Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Las Damas. Well, Season 2 of the nationwide Las Damas, our SSE Airtricity Women's Premier Division podcast. Delighted, as I said, to be back. It's great to be here. Declan McCormick is my name. This year, both Jessica Farry and Shauna Cook are joining the podcast, as we've already said. Unfortunately, tonight, it had planned that all five of us were going to be here, and they started dropping like flies from around 6 o'clock onwards. John O'Sullivan is unavailable, as is Shauna Cook. So best of luck to both of those. But Jess is here for her debut as a full member of the podcast. So Jess, welcome. And it would be nice to get the views from out west. Maybe not every week, but certainly every second week.
Yeah. We'll add a little bit of a flavour from the northwest, shall we say, underrepresented everywhere in general. So I'm here to speak up for the northwest on Toe Tap, which should probably be called the other five amigos now, surely.
It's, but Tofap doesn't quite work. You're getting into very dangerous areas there though already, Jess. So
I've been cancelled within 5 minutes. Yeah, oh dear.
And you heard the queen of Irish podcasting, Irish football podcasting anyway, speaking there.
Karen Duggan's still not here.
No. Eileen Ring returns. Eileen, how was your off season?
It was good, yeah. Stressful, but sure, it was good, isn't it? Do you know, it's Cork City fan life is always stressful, isn't it?
Life is stressful. Couldn't be any more stressful than it is today anyway. It's 8:15 on a Sunday night with kick-off in Tala, called off 30 minutes before kick-off. Nobody's happy in Cork. But I know the FAI were going to get two-footed tonight, but it's probably added another layer to it. So we will see what happens. Guys, we'll get straight into it. Do you know what? I'll start with the underage sections because the Academy League started again today and yesterday, and just the under-17s have kicked off. And in under-17 League Group A, it was Club Kildare 0, DLR Waves 4, Bray 2, Wexford 0, and Shelburne beat St. Pat's 5-0. In Group B, Cork City 3, Kerry 1, CK United 3, Waterford 7, and Treaty United 1 down in Cove. In Group C was Athlone 3, Sligo 2, Finn Harps 5, Mayo 1, Galway 1 at home to Limerick. In Group D, Shamrock Rovers 1 away in Drogheda, and Dundalk and Piedmont United finished 1-1 in Dundalk. Guys, we've mentioned a few times it's been the off-season, but Eileen, if we go right back to the very start of that off-season, basically just when we had finished up last season, news came through. Obviously, Ireland lost the playoff to Wales. Eileen Gleeson departed. Very, very quickly, just a look back at Eileen's time, and was she unfairly treated in the way that her contract wasn't renewed?
I suppose, look, she came in at a time where there seemed to be a lot of disruption, like the squad were a little bit unhappy. And I think she did a really good job at kind of uniting that group. And that was very, very clear to see from the outside, even watching in. And they obviously, that Nations League, the B campaign, it was really, really successful. And her contract was extended on the back of that. And obviously we had a nightmare with that Group A. Like, it was a horrific group, to be fair. But look, I suppose ultimately her goal was to qualify for the Euros, and we didn't do that. I know if people are looking at it simplistically and saying, well, we lost a match and she got sacked after a match. but that wasn't it. Like, I mean, we were sacked because we needed to qualify for those Euros. Like, I just think it did set us back. I have a lot of time for her. She kind of annoyed me a little bit because it's grand they've come from the league, and she has, and she's done incredible things for the women's game. But for me, I think when she got into the role, she forgot about the league a little bit. That getting rid of the home base squads and stuff just left a little bit of a bad taste with me personally. But I was kind of surprised not to see her come back into the role that she previously had. I understand there's somebody in that role, but like, when do we ever see her? Like, so she's not flat out in that role either. Like, Eileen Gleeson was very visible in that role, to be fair to her. So yeah, I think ultimately just the failing to qualify for the Euros did kill her, but the squad seemed an awful lot happier playing under Eileen and that entire management team. But yeah, that night in the Aviva, like against Wales, it's going to hurt all those players for a very, very long time, because I think they'll feel they left it behind them.
Jess, Eileen says there that Eileen Gleeson suffered because she didn't qualify for the Euros. But is that a fair reflection? I mean, obviously the group we were in was absolutely impossible. There was a huge night in Cork when we beat France down here, so there was great moments. Is it unfair to judge a manager on 2 games or even on that last single game in Dublin? Should the context of the decision be made on the whole group and everything that happened, as opposed to just that final decision, either we do or we don't make the Euros?
Yeah, maybe, but as Eileen said, we left it behind us. You know, like I don't know. It depends. We needed to qualify. That was the job that Eileen Gleeson was given was for Ireland to qualify, and it didn't happen. And in some contexts, I suppose you would turn around and you would say it was a group of death, absolute nightmare. What chance did you have? But yeah, maybe some people would look at that as unfair. There wasn't quite the outpouring of grief that maybe some people had expected when Eileen was let go. I kind of expected to see a lot more said. Obviously, look, we'll get into more details later with Colin Healy and all of that, but it just, I'm not sure, like I didn't see a whole pile rumoured that she was going to, that they were going to, FAI were going to say goodbye to her. I just didn't really, well, we didn't know, did we? But I didn't expect it to kind of happen so quickly, and it was just done and that's it, and move on. But she was told that they needed to qualify. They didn't, simple as. And I felt like it was such a crucial time for the Irish women's team. They've been doing so well, building and growing. Another tournament would have been absolutely amazing for women's football in Ireland, and it didn't happen. And it's sickening, really, isn't it? Because you're looking at some of those players who may be thinking that look, we've seen big retirements now as well. So yeah, left it behind us. Is it unfair? I'm not really sure it is, but would people have complained if she was still there? I don't know. But yeah, no, I don't know, Declan. I don't really have an answer to that question. Is it unfair? I don't know. I can see both sides. I can see why people would think it's fair. Some people would think it's not fair. I don't know.
That's fair enough. Eileen, is the fundamental bottom line here is just to make sure you don't get on the wrong side of Kieran Kilduff?
Yeah, the Kilduff effect. No, like, as you said, there wasn't a big outpouring of grief from, like, she never obviously garnered the fan club that Vera Pauw seemed to generate of people who've never watched a game of football in their lives, and they're still there. Like, they're still there. As soon as you mention the women's team, all these people emerge online. Like, it's,
I've noticed that.
Oh my God, they're absolutely painful. And look, they're not going to be listening to this, so we can call them painful, so it's fine. But yeah, no, don't annoy Kieran. And look, as I said, it's not that I just think a huge amount of the support Eileen Gleeson would have had, and it's like it was like when Stephen Kenny went into the men's team. People are like, oh, like, he's not up to that because of where he's come from, because of the league here, and there was a little bit of that rhetoric around Eileen as well. And where your support is going to come from is within that league. And then I think within the league there was this kind of sense that we were a little bit forgotten about, and then that was highlighted with some of the stuff with Kieran. And she kind of was getting her back up unnecessarily and things like that. And yeah, I agree with Jess. I don't think there was a massive amount of complaining that she went. I equally don't think there'd have been a huge amount of complaining if she'd stayed. Like, that is kind of what I felt. But look, I said I'm quite happy with who they have in there now, so I'm not going to complain. Who,
by the way, I feel really sorry for Carla Ward, because her appointment was completely overshadowed by another mess with regards to the Colin Healy situation.
Yeah, I'm going to get to Colin in 2 minutes, but you've mentioned Carla Ward there now, so we might as well stick on the Carla Ward story, Jess. She's come in Friday night, beat Turkey 1-0. Look, let's be fair, it wasn't great, but conditions were poor. The pitch was very heavy. The pitch caused lots of issues for everybody. But what do we expect from Carla Ward long term, Jess?
Well, like, I mean, as you said, look, the other night wasn't fantastic, but there's a lot of reasons for that. So far, I've actually liked the way she's talked. She's sort of been a bit, like, in a good way, bold about it. She's kind of said, look, I'm aware people aren't happy about this and this is how it's going to be. She's obviously got a brilliant CV. As Eileen said a lot, or alluded to, a lot of people would have actually just dreamed of having someone like her as manager. She's got a big job on her hands. There's no doubt about it, because, you know, to move the team to the next step is a harder thing to do. You're going to have to start kind of, I don't know, a lot of experience is gone with players retiring, as I said already. What do we expect? We're going to have to keep qualifying for tournaments now, aren't we? Like, that's the next step. It's as simple as that, because that's why Eileen Gleeson isn't there anymore, because we didn't qualify. We want to see us qualifying for more tournaments. We're probably good enough. That's what we're expecting. That's what we're wanting to see, is more qualification, improve the team, be more competitive. We're still a bit away from the top teams, obviously internationally, but another thing we want to see is a little bit more attention to our National League, which I think, are we crediting the likes of Kieran Kilduff with this development team for women's football here? I don't know. I am anyway, because fair play to him. That's a step in the right direction, I think, and just to have that kind of, that communication, I suppose communication is the wrong word, but that kind of bridge between the National League here and the international setup is a step in the right direction. That's kind of what we want to see more of as well.
Yeah, Eileen, can I ask you, is setting the bar of expectation at qualifying for international tournaments on a regular basis, is that setting that bar too high?
I don't think it is. Maybe a World Cups are always going to be harder to qualify. Like, we should be qualifying for Euros if you look at the players that we have and the players that we're producing. I love Carla Ward. I'm a really big fan of hers. When she was at Villa, like, I literally used to watch her side every week because they played such a good brand of football. I think she's been a little bit naive about expecting the Irish team she has to play that brand of football. We don't have that many technical players, to be honest, at the moment. I think what will tell a lot about her is going to be her next squad, because I think the squad she picked was nearly like a pick. Oh, this was kind of the last squad. It's not. It certainly wasn't picked on form. There's players there who don't even have clubs. She had 2 training sessions, as Jess said, as you said, Declan, about the pitch Friday. There's a whole lot of things. Like, you're not going to achieve a whole amount in 2 sessions. And Alan Mahan gave a very good interview as well during the week. Like, it was a long enough press conference. And he said, like, they're not stupid either, and they do know what they want to do. But obviously, you don't have a huge amount of time with them on the pitch. Like, I think Denise O'Sullivan said, like, she got into Ireland at Tuesday morning, so she probably didn't train fully till Wednesday. You're not going to give her another heavy session on Thursday. So, like, how much work do they even get done with them? But it was funny because in her pre-match interview, she was like, they were talking about Megan Campbell and the long throw, and she's like, we can't just be reverting to this at like 17 minutes inch or straight away, because like we're not capable at the moment of moving the ball that swiftly through the thirds and playing this lovely free-flowing football. Like, so sometimes you just have to say, this is what we're good at, so we're going to go with it. I think for me, we need to be qualifying for every European Championships, and I think we need to be getting deep in playoffs when it comes to World Cups. The yo-yoing in the Nations League, that could continue for a while as well, because the gap is so big between B and A. So like you have these. Now, to be fair, like, I think our B group this time is a little bit more challenging than the last, which helps the step up then. But like, you could have an awful draw again once you go up to the A League and you're kind of battling with playoffs and position wise. But I do think, as I said, I think Euros qualifications are non-negotiable for us at the moment, and World Cups, you want to be kind of getting close to it.
Okay, I'm just going to dip into the mailbag here now, because we did get a few questions, not many, but it kind of heads in the same direction where I was going to go. So, Jess, you've already mentioned the reintroduction of what they're now calling a development squad. It's not a home-based squad, because obviously there are players from outside the National League who are also involved in the developmental squad. Played the under-19s last Friday morning. Was it last Thursday? Or Friday, I can't remember now, but the game was played anyway, which was the big thing. Yeah. So with the introduction of Carla Ward as women's national team manager, do you think this will benefit the players in the league as she looks to fill the voids left by retirees?
Like, I think she's been open, and Alaman has been open, that they're going to look at the league here. They're going to be attending matches. And I think that alone is a big plus for the players. Like, Eileen Gleeson did not attend matches last year until it was publicly pointed out by a manager within the league. She wasn't really going to games. So, like, I think it's good to hear a manager saying that. Now, I thought the DM was going to say, but she left the match at halftime, because I was getting about 100 messages. She left the game at halftime, which isn't a great look. But at the same time, she's also in senior camp at the time, so I do get it. But yeah, like, it is not a great look to be looking, and then it said all the messages. That's what I was waiting for you to point out. I think as a player in the league, and I heard Scarlett Heron talking about it on the Koi Gig pod, like, it's a big thing for them because they haven't had this. Like, they haven't had, it's like, and they're not looking, players aren't looking for pats on the back and, oh, haven't I great? But like, to have a marker and see maybe where I need to get to and what I can get to, that's big. And if you were trying to just push every player out of this country where they're not necessarily going to be playing, like, just let them get a look at what the next level kind of looks like while being here. And then there's not this big rush to kind of shove everyone out the door, because I don't necessarily think that's working as much as people might like to think it is. They're not. We're seeing the amount of players we're seeing go across and they're not playing. Like, and like, if you look at the league this year, they all have agents, they all have management companies. If you were to believe rumours in November, there wasn't going to be a player left in this league because they're all being told by their management companies, you're going X, Y, and Z. We can get you in here, but they're going in training places for a week and then that's it. And like, I think there has to be a lot of lessons learned as the game evolves, as contract situations, as people start floating around, as there's more money comes into the game, to just be careful. It's not always like this golden goose to get across the water, and because it's not the men's game, like, it's not, and people need to remember that, I think.
No, that's very true. Jess, just to finish up on this point, Eileen Gleeson, look, we don't know who done away with the home development squad, but Eileen told us that we were moving to an under-23 squad, but there wasn't funding available and we had no timeline. She's out. Cara Ward is in a wet week and there's a developmental squad in place. It kind of looks now like the decisions around the home-based squad in under-23s were decisions that Eileen Gleeson was taking as opposed to decisions that maybe the FAI were taking. And is it a good reflection on Carla Ward that she's come in and done this straight off the bat?
Yeah, I think so. And again, it may not have been Carla Ward's decision. It may have been someone involved in the FAI who said, look, it's been pointed out that this is really lacking, and, you know, people within the league here feel like this would be a big help and maybe it's something you should consider. And maybe she's just gone, yeah, absolutely. Or look, we don't know. But I think it is a good reflection. Like, I like, it's a win-win. Like, there's nothing to lose by doing it, I don't think. And like, as Eileen said, you're giving players a chance to see kind of what's possible, but it gives them something to drive towards as well. For some of them, like, it kind of makes them think, oh, well, maybe I have a chance of something if I stay here, or maybe somebody else will look at me if I'm here, or like, I'm not being completely ignored by playing here in Ireland. Like, a lot of people don't actually want to ever have to move away. They want to be able to stay in Ireland and be in contention for something. So even if it is just being in a development squad, there's nothing to lose by doing it at all. So yeah, I think it's a good look, and it doesn't matter to me who kind of said let's do this. I think it's a positive. It's just a shame it's taken so long.
Yeah, and just very finally, Eileen, you made the point that Scarlett Heron said in the Koi Gig that, you know, it's important for players and there's something to aim for. That's exactly what Kieran Duff was saying on this podcast 6 months ago. And that's what kicked off the whole issue, in inverted commas, and the conversations that were had after that. But this just shows that Kieran was right in what he was saying, and whoever has reacted to that, be it someone in the FAI, which I very much doubt because they don't react to anything positively, or if it was Carla Ward off her own back, or whoever it might be, whoever those people are, they do deserve a pat on the back for dealing with the issue quickly. And as I said, they've moved it from just a home-based squad to a full developmental squad, which again is a small change, but it is significant.
Yeah, and again, it's important because if it's home-based and you are a player that's playing in the championship, maybe not getting that much time, you're going to say, well, I'm after making this move and I'm never going to be seen. So like, I do think it's important that it's developmental or under 23 or whatever it is, but it's that it was done quick. And you know what? It was done without a big kind of, oh, look at us, aren't we great? Which is most unusual for them, to be fair, because they normally like the fanfare. Whoever, of course, Kieran was right. We all knew at the time he was right. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But as Jess said, it's about something to strive for here, and players being able to like finish their education here and get a degree under their arse. So if they do want to go to England, there's something to come back to, because as I said, there's lads, it's the 1% are making careers that they can do nothing when they retire. Like, the very like, and 1% me being really, really generous. Like,
yeah, of course, in the midst of all this, Carla Ward's introductory press conference was pretty much dominated by the Colin Healy story. I think that was unfortunate for Carla. I don't know where to start with this story, to be honest. I will put my bias out there and say that I'm a big Colin Healy fan. But I think everybody involved in football in this country are big Colin Healy fans. There's nobody from any part of the country has come out and said a word against Colin Healy since this story broke. He's a genuinely nice man. He keeps himself to himself. He is very publicity shy. He doesn't like the media. He doesn't like talking to the media. He does it in his managerial roles. Like a prime example of what we'll show you is when the game against France was in Cork. We kind of expected maybe that Colin would have some media engagements. I emailed the FAI asking if he'd do this podcast. They came back and said he wasn't going to be available for media. He did no media in the build up to the France game in his hometown in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And that just shows that he just doesn't want to, if he doesn't have to, be engaged with the media. So for him to put out the statements that he put out of such a personal nature just shows how upset and how bothered he was by what he sees as his poor treatment by the FAI. On the other side of it, you have Mark Canham, who, look, fundamentally has nobody believes him. You know, they just don't. He has no credibility in this argument. Mark Canham has no credibility. He was one of Jonathan Hill's. Somebody Jonathan Hill brought in. He has a nice gig. He came out and he told us that Heimer was his first choice for the Irish men's job. Everybody knows that's bullshit. He made a video about the men's recruitment thing. Then he had to make another one 3 days saying that he had misspoken the first one and that, you know, look, let's forget about what I said in that one and we'll stick what I'm going to say in this one, you know. And that's why I say he has no credibility. So when he comes out and says, "Oh, I said this to Colin and I said that to Colin," the simple fact is nobody believes him. You know, people believe Colin Healy because we know Colin Healy is an honest, truthful footballing person. That's not to say that Mark Canham isn't truthful. I'm just saying his interpretation of what happened is clearly not correct. So, look, I don't know where to go with it. Colin obviously feels like he's been very, very poorly treated. Carla Ward said something very significant before the Turkey game, to me anyway. She was asked about whether she considered Colin Healy for part of her staff. And she said basically that she wasn't allowed to. He had left the building and she could not consider him. She said, if he was here, I would have considered him, but he wasn't. He had left the building and everybody took it that she was told by the FAI, Colin Healy will not be part of your staff. What's your feeling on the whole situation, Eileen?
Anger, really. Like, it just, as you said, and again, like, I am biased. I'm a Colin Healy fan. I'm from Cork. I'm a Cork City fan. He's somebody whose career you follow. But it's like that. It's his story. And I think if you see the players who have come out in support of him, like, no one comes out and speaks out about the FAI. No one does it. Nobody in-house does it. Very, very rarely. The last person to do it was a man from Cork, oddly enough. Like, it just doesn't happen. So to see Denise straight out to do it, see, you don't cross Norries, lads. That has to be a lesson to everyone, okay? Don't annoy Norries, okay? People from the north side of Cork are not for annoying. Like, but you see Denise, you see Caitlin Hayes was out straight away, Aoife Mannion was out straight away. Katie McCabe sat in a press conference the other day where she's in the same building as these people and she's speaking out against them. And of course, we have the usual shite underneath. Oh, why don't they just play the game? No, they're coming out and speaking up for what's right and about the mistreatment of their coach. But it's not that. And like, they've all said, it's how good a person he is. And like, he went so above and beyond for them all. And when anybody hears about that treatment and of an individual, they're absolutely right to speak out, because no one ever speaks out about the FAI. And that's why it's shit show after shit show in the building, because everyone's terrified to speak. And we have like men in power making these daft decisions, just as you said, like, and the association has no credibility. Like, any single day I'm in work, like, people come in, like, and it's just always a talking point, like, what a shit show. And it's shit show after shit show after shit show. And then we're like, oh, well, we can't get funding, we can't get this. Of course you can't. There's nobody trusts the entire association. Like, and I feel so bad for the decent people, and we all, the three of us here, will know very, very decent, good football people that are working in that building. And it must be so hard. It really must be, because like you must just feel like banging your head against a brick wall with dealing with some of those people every day. Because I said the treatment Colin Healy got, it's despicable. Like it really is. You wouldn't treat anybody that way. It's just not good enough. And it said, I think it was the day he released a statement. I think to me that was like, oh, this is bad, because like as Declan said, the man doesn't speak. Like he barely, I'd say, did press conferences as a city manager. He hates speaking to the media so much. So like for him to release it, I think is just a sign of how bad. And I'm glad the players are standing by him, even though they're getting the usual, as I said, online keyboard warriors who just want to, God forbid, a woman stands up and speaks her mind. But look, I think fair play to the players, because that's not an easy thing for them to do either. And fair play to Carla Ward, because she's facilitating them to do that, because she knows what happened shouldn't have happened as well.
Yeah, Jess, look, I mean, obviously myself and Aileen are both from Cork. We both know Colin. Look, I mean, I did our post-game stuff on Cork City press conferences with Colin for a season. Prior to that, he threw me out of press conferences, which I know fully understand. Well. And yeah, and like, but this is the thing about Colin. He threw me out of press conferences, and I will sit here and defend the man till the day I die, because, you know, that's just the type of character as he is. He threw me out because he felt something I said wasn't right and wasn't proper. And that's fair. That's, you know, that's fine. We spoke about it and we got over it, and that's grand. And, you know, I appreciate his honesty and all those things. So, you know, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I understand that, and I have died by the sword a few times. But the point I'm making is that, you know, I will still sit here and defend him, because that's the kind of character he is. But myself and Eileen have that bias. You don't. You're a Sligo, Northwest. Is the way we see this situation basically the way that you see it personally, and the rest of the country sees it, Jess?
Yeah, I think so, because we can go on about Cork bias all we want, but as you like, I had never had any interactions with Colin Healy until he came down to Sligo a couple of years ago, and he, God love him, he had to do LOI TV, and I knew he was hating every second of it, but he was polite and kind, and I went away after and I said, God, what a nice man Colin Healy is. And I always have an impression of a manager after meeting them, and I was just like, he is so nice. It was all I kept saying afterwards was, he is so nice. And like, it's easy for people who know him to come out and say it's terrible what's gone on, it's terrible what's been done to him or how he's been treated. But I think generally everybody is united on this one, because like, you don't hear, as you said, you don't hear a lot from Colin Healy. He could have gone to the papers and rang someone up and said, here, I want to tell you all about my mistreatment by, or what I see as mistreatment by the FAI. But he released a statement because he didn't actually want to have to do any of the media itself. And then, as you said, players coming out and speaking about him. But I was actually really struck by Stephen Bradley in his press conferences regarding Shamrock Rovers and Europe, and he obviously was so annoyed that his programme notes were allegedly went missing when he had spoken about the way Colin Healy was treated by the FAI. And I know he said, look, it'll sound like sour grapes now, but it was meant to be in the match programme for the Bows game, but now because we lost and all this, and it sounds like sour grapes that I'm saying it. But I actually thought that for Stephen Bradley to come out and kind of have a right go about the way Colin Healy was treated as well speaks volumes about how he's received by other managers in the league and what other people think of him as well. And obviously that's brought up in conversation about having a league managers association and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's Cork bias at all. I think, look, you can see the volume of support he's received. And as Eileen said, there's a lot of people out there who, the same warriors every single time a female player says something. And it used to always be poor Diane Caldwell. I noticed who used to get the most abuse for some reason. Like, as you said, God forbid female footballers want better treatment for everybody. But yeah, I think everybody is united in how they feel about the Colin Healy thing.
Yeah, we just speak about the FAI, and I know we're drifting into the men's game now, we don't really, but that situation where Stephen Bradley's programme notes go missing, allegedly because he criticises the FAI. I mean, that just about sums up everything that is wrong with football in this country. And I mean, it's never going to change. And look, I mean, to be fair to Stephen Bradley, he came pretty close to calling for Mark Canham's head, but he can't do it because he'd get fined and Shamrock Rovers would get fined and they'll be in breach of the participation agreement and all that claptrap that clubs have to sign up to try and keep them quiet. Richie Sadlier on RT the other night came pretty close, and then he backed away from it, and he did the whole, oh, I know things you don't know, and it's all going to come out, instead of just having a backbone and standing up and saying whatever he knew or whatever he thinks he knows. And then, like, so, but we don't work for RT. We don't have a participation agreement with the FAI, and none of that crap applies to us. Like, so we can just say Mark Canham is not fit for purpose. He should not be in the role that he is in. And the sooner the FAI move him on, the better for football in this country. That's my own personal view. It's not the view of this podcast. I'm not going to ask you guys for your view. You can give it if you wish to, but as far as I would be concerned, Canham has no business having an office in Abbottstown, and the sooner he's sent back on a plane from which whence he came, the better for Irish football. As I said, that's my opinion.
Or get off the fence.
How do you really feel?
Yeah, get off the fence.
He should never have survived the Heimer, that whole thing, the 2 videos and the rest of it. He should never have survived that. Like, there's numerous other.
I agree with Stephen Bradley, and I understand Declan because I feel the same.
And yeah,
it's not a nice feeling.
No, do people realise how hard it is for me to agree with him? Like, it's just like, it's heartbreaking stuff. But we all have to do these things for the betterment of the game here. Look, I'm pretty sure Colin will be. Will last much longer in football than any member of the FAI will ever do. Look, we'll turn it back to our own league, guys. Managerial merry-go-rounds, Jess. We had 11 clubs at the end of last season, of which 8, I think, have made a managerial change or a director of football change. So Peamount, Wexford, Cork City, Treaty, Sligo, Athlone and Bohemians have all changed managers for numerous different reasons. And Shamrock Rovers have sacked their director of football, and it's now all falling solely on Collie O'Neill's shoulders. So that's 8. And then obviously Waterford have joined the league and Gary Hunt has joined as their manager. So that is significant turmoil in what is fundamentally a small league.
Yeah, I actually had to get a pen and a piece of paper earlier on and write down all the managerial changes because, yeah, like I am a bit, I have it here. I'm a bit old school and I'm pen and paper. But I was sitting there going, oh yeah, sure, such and such is gone. This person's come in. Then I was like, oh my God, I'm actually going to forget all of them. Like there's just been some, as you said, Declan, turmoil. It nearly feels like it. Yeah, a lot of changes. It's, I know we'll probably speak about this later, but the Women's League has lost 2 big characters in Ken Kiernan and Kieran Kilduff, and it's a terrible shame. I'm not saying they were wrong to leave or anything, or they don't really owe the Women's League anything, I don't think, but it's just a shame that the 2 of them are gone, particularly because Kieran, as we've spoken at length about already, was so willing to speak up about issues he found or whatever. And yeah, big loss, and I'm actually kind of surprised we spoke about it as well. Tommy Hewitt didn't go for a job or didn't get one. We nearly thought he would come in and get a gig. Interested to see Colin Fortune at Athlone, how that will go. Obviously he's, big name in the men's game as well, so that will be interesting. Steve Feeney back at Sligo Rovers. Players were all very fond of him when he was there. A bit of rebuilding to do again at Sligo Rovers too. But yeah, even Sean Russell coming in at, in interesting times. Like, and it's really hard to assess Peamount having co-managers, joint managers, is that what we're calling it? It's nearly like the GAA with the joint captains thing that they do in GAA. It just feels like a very GAA move, doesn't it? Is that just me? A lot of turmoil, a lot of change. It's going to take a while to get used to all these new faces. Eileen,
Jess has mentioned it there, so I'll go with it. Kieran and Ken Kiernan step away. Obviously, look, they had to take the jobs they got. I mean, that's just the way of the world. They can't turn down those opportunities. The thing that struck me, and Jess mentioned it there, is when all these opportunities come up, it's been more or less a rehashing of older. Steve Feeney's gone back in at Sligo. Frank Kelleher's gone in at Cork City. Wexford rehashed it. Colin Fortune's gone back in at Athlone. Like, where's the new managerial talent coming from? Where's that fresh blood that you would have expected to have seen. Sean Russell at Treaty is basically the only new name or unknown name who has stepped into the breach.
Yeah, I don't know. And like that, like we see so many people and players that are on their coaching badges and they're all on this journey, they're on their journey. But like you have to obviously have a certain coaching badge, and it takes years to get to these levels of having your A or having your pro. So I think maybe it's going to be another year or two before we see that coming through. Like I think Steph Zambra is gone in coaching at Rovers now. So that's probably the first time we've really seen kind of a player that's really stepped into kind of a prominent role, maybe with a look to going into management further down the line. I don't know. But like you would have thought maybe there would be maybe some Gary down at Waterford. Like Gary was around the women's league for years before he went into the men's and has stayed involved in the women's game locally in Waterford as well. So yeah, like you could see it, I suppose, in the underage leagues more. But it's to make that step up, I think, to senior level. But I as I said, just because it's a license required, I think that does limit it limits it massively. And look, it limits it so massively. There's 2 clubs have managers that are FAI employees, which I'm not sure is allowed to happen, is it, Declan?
Oh, look, for God's sake. Yeah. I emailed the FAI, must be a month ago, when those announcements were made. Because, look, obviously we're lucky enough, we talked to people around the league, and this was something that was cropping up. We're not having you go off the clubs, we're not having you go off the 2 managers involved. It's just simply, for years it was accepted there was no double jobbing in the FAI. If you worked for the FAI, you weren't allowed to have a job in the league. Now all of a sudden 2 employees are managers at League of Ireland women's clubs. So has the policy within the FAI changed, or what's going on? And that's the question I asked the FAI, and of course we got no answer. Now we know they do get our emails, because when they answered us when we asked about our accreditation, they told us no, they had checked with Cork City, and Cork City had said no, we couldn't have accreditation, so therefore the FAI wouldn't give us accreditation. And Pat Chats is back next season, or this season, which is great news, because I'd nearly prefer to do it on the footpath now anyway. But do you have the situation now where 2 managers in the league out of 12 teams are FAI employees? And like, Jess, is there conflict of interest there? There has to be in some ways, in some degrees.
Maybe. You could make that argument, but I mean, I suppose the only issue for me personally is that a few years ago they weren't allowed to do it, so now can they do it? Like, I mean, it doesn't personally bother me if someone is working for the FAI and is managing a club. I don't know. Could there be a conflict of interest? I suppose there could. But I don't see it as a big issue. It's just, are they allowed to or not? They must be allowed to. They wouldn't take those jobs if they couldn't, right? So like it must have changed now. But personally, I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has an issue with it. I asked the FAI, because clearly there's been a change in policy, and that was more the angle I was going. Why did the policy change? What happened in Abbottstown that people know? Because the new stats guy on the men's side at Sligo, I can remember John Russell saying, is also an FAI employee. So it's not just in the women's game it's happened, it's in the men's game. And as I said, I was just wondering about the change of policy, but obviously I didn't get an answer, because the FAI never answer questions like that, to be fair to them. They are consistent.
Yeah, but I suppose, just another note as well, a lot of the people who work in the coach education side of things as well for the FAI are probably coaches at clubs as well, or like, so then they have to be able to coach somewhere, in order to get, I'm just thinking out loud here, but yeah, look, I'd imagine they've changed it. As you said, Nigel Naughton at Sligo Rovers as well, and on the men's side of things, he's in part-time at Sligo Rovers doing the analysis or whatever, and then he obviously works for the FAI as well, so they must have changed it, which is fine if they did, but you'd like confirmation of that.
Yeah, I just can't see why they couldn't answer an email and tell us exactly why the policy changed and what drove the change.
Pain in the arse, Declan. Emailing all the time.
I always come in here and said, I email. Like, I rarely email them. I think I sent them 3 emails last year in total, apart from the ones where I abused them at the start of the year about not getting accreditation. But
yeah, not great. Maybe that might have something to do with it.
We got over that, I know we're all still buddies, to be fair. When I meet them face to face, there's no issue. It's just as somebody said to me one night, we're not putting that in writing, not for you, So I think that's probably the overwhelming way of doing things. back to the season. So, Eileen, who steps in and takes on that mantle that Kieran Kilduff was building last year? Was kind of, I don't want to say the league spokesman, but he was becoming the senior figure amongst the management group. When he left, I thought, okay, well, Ken Kieran is the most likely to step into the void here. And then 2 weeks later, Ken was gone as well, with Kieran to Dundalk. And now I look around, Danny Murphy was a possibility because he's not afraid to speak his mind. He's now with Fleetwood in England. So who fills the void? Is it someone? Does Gary Hunt come in and do it? Is there somebody that we're kind of sleeping on? Maybe that might be the one to fill that role.
Maybe Mr. Weirin might be inspired by his colleague on the men's side at Shelburne.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably the most obvious candidate. But like you said, it's not something that people will do necessarily. Like, it has to be something that comes naturally to you, or there's no point in it because it'll sound forced. Do you know what I mean? It has to just be. But I think Owen probably is, for a number of reasons. Shelburne interview him regularly, so he's probably the manager you hear from the most. You hear from the Shamrock manager a bit as well, because they do their own in-house interviews. So I think Owen Weirin is probably the most obvious candidate for it. But it's something that you'd hope, like, Frank Kelleher is more than capable of standing up. People might think he's a very nice man, and he is an incredibly nice man. But I wouldn't cross him or agitate him in any way, because it's not only that, but he's incredibly articulate. So he'd literally kill someone with an argument very quickly. So he has that capability, and he's incredibly knowledgeable about the game as well. But again, he's just back into a job in a very different league than where he left. So you need a while to adjust as well. So I think for that reason, Owen Weirin probably looks like the most likely candidate, I think.
But will we ever hear from Frank? And that's not being smart. But I mean, the media coverage of the league is pretty minimal, So Kieran Kilduff came on here, said what he said, and it got picked up nationally by the papers, and then it was driven on from there. Fantastic, brilliant. That's what we're here from. I can tell you now, we're not going to hear from Frank Kelleher this year. As much as it pains me, I'm a Cork City fan, I'll be at the games. We know we're not going to hear from Frank Kelleher. Frank Kelleher's media opportunities are going to be pretty limited. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. So, it would be brilliant if it was Frank Kelleher, but the club aren't going to allow him to put himself in the position to be that person,
Possibly, but he also is, I think, has said, look, maybe just give it a couple of weeks, because I said, I know him. I worked with him. I worked with him in football. And he's a very strong character. And if he wants to do something, if he wants to come out and talk to the media, he'll come out and talk to the media. I think Phil at Galway is obviously the other one, again, very articulate around the game now a good bit, and is very well respected in the game. So, and obviously a very sharp dresser, so will always look great in an interview. So I said, he speaks a lot of sense, and he was very vocal after Kieran spoke out last year. So it said, it's just about them, I think, as well. Again, Stephen Bradley had said, that manager association, something like that helps, because they can all collectively come together, and that's what's important. When Kieran came out last year, he wasn't just saying my Athlone players are brilliant. He's saying, look at the league as a whole, and that's what's important. It's not necessarily a manager saying, my club are brilliant, look at us, we're unbelievable. It's about the entire league, and it does have to be that big picture.
Viva Las Damas! Viva Las Damas!
So, look, just following up on that then, so guys, can I just ask in general, maybe I'll start with you, Jess. What's your overall feeling of the off-season from a league point of view? Because personally, I think it's been a terrible off-season. As I said, we've lost 7 managers, including James O'Callaghan, who didn't get any mention there. But I mean, James is going to be a big loss to the league. Ken and Kieran are gone to the men's game. Danny's gone to England. Other managers have just stepped away. Others have stepped back in. And then there's players as well, the likes of Leo O'Leary is gone. Jenna Slattery is gone. Tegan Ruddy is travelling, I believe, and isn't going to play this year. Alex Mendes is gone. Laurie Ryan isn't going to play this year by all accounts. And there's others. That's just off the top of my head. And
Megan Smith Lynch as well. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Brenda Tabby, I think, is gone. Jesse Rossman is gone. There's like, obviously Shelburne lost a load of their players, Eileen, Maggie Pierce and others. So there's a quality of player leaving the league that it's very, very, very hard to replace from the academy structures, because the academy structures just simply aren't developed enough yet. It takes time for those structures to develop, and they're probably not there yet. So, like, I look at it and I just think it's a terrible, terrible off season for the league. And I don't know whether you feel that way as well, Jess, or whether I'm just over dramatizing things again.
I get where you're coming from, because as a fan of the Women's League, it's obviously disappointing to see the best players leaving. Obviously they're not all Irish, so it's not as if we're exporting all of our best, I suppose. But it's always disappointing. But that's the nature of the league here. Like, I mean, it's always been the way in the men's game. But the men's game here has got to the point where, as we can see over the last while, there's players who are actually getting more money here now playing for Irish teams somehow than they may get in Scotland or wherever. So until we can get to a point where players can actually earn a living, female players, I should say, can actually earn a living playing here, which, as we know, and that's a conversation for another day, we are a long, long, long way away from. Until we can get to that point, every off-season could be depressing, Declan, if you get me. Like, every off-season could be grim, where we're losing all the best players. There'll always be someone else to step up. There'll always be someone who, we're talking in a few months' time when we do the end of season podcast, we'll be talking about this person was amazing and that person was amazing. It's just the nature of it. Like, yeah, it is disappointing, but unfortunately, that's how it's going to be. I know a lot of the players who have gone or who aren't playing or whatever are big names and players we've all really enjoyed watching, but unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. It's crap. It is what it is. To paraphrase Liam Buckley there, it is what it is.
Eileen, Jess is far too positive for me to be on this podcast, to be honest with you. We have also, I forgot, Ericsson, the centre back at Galway, is gone as well, and of course the biggest name of them all, Eileen, Julianne Russell, has stepped away, retired. Not alone to the league is that a hammer blow. It's a hammer blow to the international side as well, but you have to respect the 10, 12, 15 years that Julianne has given the game, and obviously she goes with the best wishes of every League of Ireland fan out there.
Yeah, and again, like, as a fan of the league and just being selfish and just loving watching her play, like, you're gutted to see her go, but like I have a kid myself, it's no joke time-wise, like, let alone to be playing at the level she's playing at. She has a very, very big job as well. It's going to be very time-consuming to then be going into international camps. I just think time-wise, you're expecting... I think we all take for granted the commitment that's required to play at National League level, and they do it for very little reward. And as the game is getting bigger, there's more and more demands on their time. Like, and I just think, as I said, it's hard. It must be really hard. Like, I think, Declan, we spoke that, like, they came down to play City on a Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday night, and she must be all hours getting back up the road, and then like she's to chat to two fools outside in a footpath and lashing rain, like, as well, before she can even get in a bus. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's a huge loss for the league. Like, they're all big losses for the league. I think Julianne probably drew some extra eyes because the manner which she hit the international scene back to, like, that was just, I mean, she's looked fitter. We talk about having to go across to the UK to be playing in professional league. She was fitter than all of them, like, but that's a genetic thing as well. Do you know what I mean? That's not something everyone could do naturally. Like, she had a baby and I think ran like a outrageous time in a marathon, like, I mean, athletically, even a few months after having a kid, like, daft stuff. Like, so it'd be interesting to see what she does next, whether that's if she stays in football, like, because she's just so well respected, and you could see that, like, there was no issues when she went back into the international squad. They were just all so happy to have her back in, and a big loss, I think, like, there. But like, I think Jess is right in that there's new players now coming in, step into it. Like, we didn't know who Maggie Pierce or like Jamie Erickson or Erin Van Dalder were a few years ago, and they became kind of household names to us. And for me, like, Maggie Pierce is probably the biggest loss of them all in terms of ability wise, because for me, like, she's probably been the best player in the league on a consistent level over the last 2 years, and I think that's really hard to replace for Shells. The one that I'm hearing just a huge amount about at the moment is Kelly Brady at Athlone. Supposed to be a really exciting player. I've heard it from a few clubs who've played against her in pre-season, and I think she was on that Irish development squad as well. I was supposed to be very good that day, but like, go on to FEI Connect and look at Athlon's team, because there's a load of players there they haven't announced. So like, we've no idea what they're going to look like. So yeah, as you say, on paper at the moment, you're saying, oh God, we've lost all these people. But in a few weeks, we're going to be talking about X, Y, or Z, and some of the young kids that have come through from academies that kind of come from nowhere. Like, so I think it's going to be another exciting league, to be honest, despite, as I said, losing what we've lost.
Yeah, just very quickly to offset some of the loss of caliber players that we spoke about, Ellen Malloy has come back to the league, Eileen. That's a huge bonus especially for Wexford.
Huge bonus for Wexford. I think like Wexford aren't going to be far off this season. Like, they've had an incredible, like, they've made the best signing within the league in Aoife Kelly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then obviously Ellen coming back in, like, they've brought back Becky Caston and she's flying in pre-season. They've just had a really good transfer window, and like, Ellen again is like, as a supporter of the league, she's who you want to see. Like, she did brilliantly for Sheffield United, and look, it didn't work out for different reasons over there. But like, again, as a fan of the league, aren't we lucky that we get to see her now every week, because she's an absolute joy to watch. Like, and yeah, I think Wexford, I think last year obviously they were hit and miss, and then they went on a good run towards the end of the season. But if they can start the season strongly, they've finished very strongly for the last few years. But obviously they had to announce Jane Merrin, who they had previously announced, I think, is staying, is gone now. So like, I thought she was excellent for them last year, but they've signed Maria O'Sullivan, and she's very, very capable as well. But yeah, I think Wexford, we might be seeing them. John O'Sullivan would be delighted.
I thought of John O'Sullivan when I saw those two signings. John O'Sullivan, Ellen Malloy, was like, John O'Sullivan was going to be delighted.
Yeah. I wonder by the time we're recording next Sunday night whether Jane Merrin has a new landing spot out west. We'll have to wait and see what happens during the week.
They were caught once with one player on LOI Connect or FEI Connect, and they weren't going to be caught with the second. She's been swiped from the system there, it appears.
Yeah. That's obviously Shauna Fox going to Galway, which hasn't been announced yet, but is widely available to view on FEI Connect. Just in case people are wondering, we're going to leave the season preview until next week. We'll go through the clubs, everything else. We just want to deal with the off-season this week. And the only game to preview is Saturday's President's Cup final. I mean, it's the President's Cup game. Athlone against Shelbourne, Talca Park, 3 o'clock on Saturday. Jess, as Eileen has already mentioned, we're a little bit in the dark about Athlone because the pre-season games they've played, what's been up on FEI Connect has just been a load of trialists, a couple of recognisable names. I believe Brenda Tabe is gone, as we said. Maddie Gibson hasn't, according to FEI Connect, played any part in pre-season, but she probably has. There's kind of an element of what's going on in Athlone and what kind of a side are they going to have on the pitch this season.
Yeah, well, one thing I will say about FAI Connect is that I don't know how it works, obviously, but I know that a lot of the time I've been at games and I've looked at the team on FAI Connect and it's saying 1T, 2T, 3T, 4T. And I'm like, why is he down as trialist? He's been playing for them for the last 4 years,
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like genuinely, Derry City played Sligo Rovers men in a friendly, and I think only 3 or 4 of the starting 11 in Derry were named. So I thought, loads of trialists and all the new signings, but sure, it was the team from last year, and I've noticed that as well with particularly the women's side. If it's like academy players who are coming into the starting 11, they're just not registered in time or something on FA, something like that. So that's potentially what the reason we're not seeing a full team from Athlone. And obviously there's probably a couple of new faces in there that haven't been announced, but without the knowledge of what their full starting team has been in pre-season, it's hard to kind of sit here and say, Athlone are going to be like this or they're going to be like that. I did see Maddie Gibson in Athlone Town Stadium when I was up for a men's pre-season friendly between Sligo Rovers and Athlone Town, and she was there in her full Athlone Town gears watching on. So maybe she will be playing a part. Brenda Tabe, who every time you see her name I think of Eileen, you'd be glad to know, just because you're such a big fan. Big loss, yeah, and it's a shame if she is not there. But yeah, it's kind of hard to know. We have an idea of what Shells are going to be like, and we're kind of unsure about Athlone just because we're not aware of the full squad as of yet. I suppose that's kind of where we're at with it. It's very hard to sit here and say it's going to be this sort of a game or that sort of a game. As you said, you don't think Larry Ryan is playing this year. Huge loss for Athlone. And yeah, look, we'll wait and see. Maybe we'll get more news during the week in that regard.
Yeah, that would be hopefully what would happen. Look, I'm not for a second saying Maddie Gibson won't be playing for Athlone, but she will be. I'm just saying her name hasn't appeared on the team sheets in pre-season, but she will be playing for Athlone this season. Eileen, just on Brenda Tabby, because like as I said, we're now fairly sure she's gone. I was looking at her because I was preparing for this, and I was looking at her stuff on Saturday night, and I didn't know at that stage that she wouldn't be playing. If you take out the day she made her debut where she played for 30 minutes, I think it was against Piedmont, she played 11 games after that and had 11 goal involvements. So she either assists or goals scored. She had 11 in 11 games. Replacing that is a big ask, you know. When we think she had come in to replace Casey Howe, who had a very, very good first half of the season for them and then went to England, it's incredibly difficult to do it twice in the bounce.
Really hard, but I think they've done it with this girl Kelly Brady. As you said, she's supposed to be excellent. I've heard like everyone's raving about her. Like no pressure whatsoever, Kelly. Of course, if you are listening, sorry about that. And Roisin Malloy hasn't featured on FEI Connect either, and I think she's absolutely flying, and I think did very, very well in that development game as well. I heard from a few different people who were up there. So look, you're probably going to still see they're going to score freely. I think Jessie Rossman and Larry Ryan, though, just leave them. Like defensively, you would worry there, like because Larry was just such that rock, and you saw that in the cup final. Like once you took her out of the side, like that protection for their back line was just gone. So I think for me that's the big gap in there to fill. But like they seem to said have a lot of players in from the States and stuff. So it's about how they adjust to the league. And it's I suppose it is that unknown, and how Shelburne adjust without Maggie Pearce because she was so key for them. But they obviously signed Evian Clancy from Wexford, which I think is a really good signing, but it's a big, like they're big boots to fill, like in terms of that level of just consistently being really, really good, while never kind of maybe standing out. But as soon as you take her out of their team again, a bit like Laurie and Athlone, it's a big difference maker. So interesting. And they announced another American girl today who's kind of a striker. So will you see that little bit of support for Kate Mooney as well? Which they need because Megan Smith-Lynch is gone, Christy Gray is gone. Like they were very heavily depleted really in the off season. Shelburne, in terms of like players that were starters for them, their squad was probably too big, and that's probably killed them a little bit because there was too many good players not playing at all. So it'll be a good look. It's always I like the President's Cup. I think it's kind of, you never really tell a whole pile from it at the same time, but it's just you know you're back underway and into the swing of things.
After the cup final, when I spoke to Owen Weir, and he made it very clear that his biggest issue he felt in the off season would be retention more so than recruitment, Eileen. And that's definitely the way it worked out. As you said, Megan Smith-Lynch, Christy Gray, Maggie Pearce, Mia Dodge, you know, they've lost numerous really, really good players. Are you confident that they're going to be able to hit the levels that they hit last year with the squad that they've put together?
Yeah, I think they will. Once they keep the squad, like especially their starting 11 fit. Like I don't like, to be fair, losing someone like Mia Dodd, like Mia's a brilliant player, but she didn't feature massively for Shelburne, so she's not like, do you know what I mean? So while she's probably very good in training and a brilliant number to have in training, I get why she moved because she'd started every other club in the country, and so I get why she made the move. Like because I suppose if Galway hadn't lost Julianne, I'd be saying, oh, Galway are heavy favourites for this, but they have lost you, so everyone else has lost. I think, like I said, Wexford and Piedmont are the two for me that we'll obviously get into it more next week, but Shells will be thereabouts. Like they still have Pearl, they still have Noelle, they still have Rachel. They know how to win. And last year hurt them an awful lot. And you could see that after the cup final. Losing that league last year really, really hurt them. And I think they'll know their slow start last year really cost them. Like it really, really cost them. And I think they'll know that this year and they'll be chomping at the bit from the get-go.
Kate Mooney getting 15 goals or whatever she will get this year, maybe more. Jess will give them a massive boost and probably something that maybe most other teams in the country don't have. Do you see any element in the President's Cup game of Athlone looking for revenge for what was? Look, it was a smacking in the cup final. There's no point in saying anything else, to be fair, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure Athlone that's going to be probably replaying in their minds all week leading up to this game. Like I don't think the President's Cup is going to be a repeat of that at all. I certainly hope it isn't. But I don't think it will be. Again, we're not 100% sure on Athlone, but I mean, I've no doubt that they'll be strong again. And Shells, as you've said, they have lost players. Everybody's lost players. I still think that'll be a tighter game than the cup final last year. Athlone won't let that happen again. Definitely won't. Yeah, I actually think it could be a high scoring game. I don't know. I'm basing this off very little, but I just have that feeling like, I'm hoping it is a high scoring game because that would be good. And yeah, good to have it back, most importantly. Good to have the Women's League back. There was so much hype for the Men's League restarting. I'd like to see, we're never going to have the same level, at least not yet, for the Women's League, but I'd like to see a little bit more in the next while, in the next week or so. I'd like to see a lot more talk about the Women's League returning. Fingers crossed there will be, because it kind of needs to be hyped up a little bit more than it is. But yeah, good to have it back, and hopefully a good entertaining game in the President's Cup final, even though it's not final, but yeah.
Do any of us believe it will be hyped correctly, Eileen?
Absolutely not. We'll hype it. I'm not sure after that. Hopefully, look, again, you're relying on the clubs to do a good job. We know what clubs will do a good job. We know a lot of clubs, A, won't, and B, maybe some don't actually have the manpower to do it. So, yeah, look, said it'll be the usual outlets that run with it, and we'll just keep pushing it as best we can with the clubs that'll talk.
Absolutely. Right, very quickly, prediction. Who wins the President's Cup?
Shells.
Yeah, I'll say Shells as well.
Be different.
3 for Shells. Sorry, Athlone. Yeah, okay.
We should say sorry to Shelburne because we're Jonas. Like.
Yeah. That'll happen too. Okay, very quickly, just a couple of questions. How much of an impact will the new LOI TV camera arrangement have on the Women's Premier Division, Jess?
Hopefully bigger than what we think. My biggest issue is that I believe that if the product looks good, it will attract more people to it. I also believe you have to spend money to make money in a lot of cases. And in order to actually develop and grow the Women's League, people have to be able to watch a game comfortably on camera with professional kind of equipment, whatever it may be. I know it's only going to be one camera, and I know a lot of clubs actually got rid of the Pixelot themselves last year, but a lot of other clubs didn't because they just couldn't afford to pay someone to do the camera or whatever. But I actually think just for the simple fact of actually being able to watch a game more comfortably, see things better, you'll have a better view of the game. It'll be easier to pick out players, to pick things out when you're watching it back, and the product is just going to look better. It just simply it'll look better, easier to watch without the Pixelot as well. So yeah, I think it actually will have might be only a small impact, but I do think it will help to grow the league, even if it's only in a small way. It's a good thing. It's a good change.
Yeah, do you know, one of the things that will help as well, I think, Eileen, is, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but on the men's side so far anyway, there's 5-minute highlight packages from each game. So if you go to click on a game that's already taken place, it asks you, how much time do you have? Full 90 minutes or just a quick 5 minutes? I hope that's offered on the women's side as well, because people, sitting down at 7:30 on a Friday night to watch their men's team might just say, 5 minutes, I'll click in here and I'll have a look at what the women did last week, and all that stuff helps. So it would also help us greatly when we're trying to watch 6 games a week or whatnot. If you could condense everything into just call it the toe tap 5 minutes or something, or the last Damas 5 minutes for us, But a level of professionalism, Eileen, is badly needed at certain clubs around the country, and you would hope this would be the start of growing the product in a professional manner, as Jess has said already.
Yeah, absolutely. And LOI TV is brilliant. Even when, and I gave out about plenty and some of the cameras and stuff last year, and it was harder to watch certain clubs, but in terms of the product, I think most clubs put on, it's very good in terms of most have 2 up in the commentary. The commentary is really, really knowledgeable, especially in the grounds where they are only one, apart from Sligo. She's terrible, your one.
The worst.
But it's great to see, and it's said the likes of P-Mount, who are never going to be able to afford to put in cameras, and that's absolutely understandable. But at the same time, they're one of the clubs that their commentary is always excellent, that kind of way. So it'll be great to be able to see, as you said, see it. My big gripe with it week 1 was I was at the Cork City match, City had a really good chance like a few seconds in, and I couldn't rewind on the app. I don't know, has that been rectified since? It has, like, that is poor, like, especially again if you're kind of someone like us who's having to watch a load of games at the weekend. It will just have to be a case of go back. But I know when you went in after, you can go through it, but when you're live watching, to be able to not go back that's a flaw, I think.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question then, so as well, from the new signings, who do you think will have the biggest impact on their teams this season? I think I know who Eileen's going to say based on the fact she's mentioned the name twice already tonight. So, Jess, we might start with you.
Oh, give me a minute. Go straight to Eileen. I need to think about this one.
Okay,
I'm going
Eileen.
to say someone different. I'm going to say Aoife Kelly. I'm going to say Aoife Kelly to Wexford is an incredible signing from Wexford. Do you know that's what I was going to say, or did you think I was going to say Kelly Brady?
No, I thought you were going to say Kelly Brady, and then I was going to say I was happy then that I would say Aoife Kelly.
See, I personally haven't seen Kelly Brady. I'm just relying on everyone else who's saying she's incredible. So, I think Aoife Kelly, like, I think that she's a huge loss for Shamrock and a massive signing for Wexford.
Yeah, no, I was going to say Aoife Kelly, Eileen, and I thought, you would be on Karen Brady, and therefore I would be in the clear.
Karen Brady. She's still on The Apprentice, not in the National League yet.
She's
West
still
Ham
on
United.
West Ham.
No Baroness here yet. But look, you never know. The game's growing, Declan.
Sorry, yeah. I'm completely rattled up. People don't realise what's been going on here. My internet has been dropping out a lot, so I've just come back in again. So, yeah, sorry. It's not Karen Brady, Eileen, it is
Kelly Brady.
Kelly Brady, yeah. So I'm not going to cut that out. We leave it in, so be it. The fact remains that, I mean, how do Shamrock Rovers lose Aoife Kelly? I know we'll do this next year, but just on this, how do Shamrock Rovers lose Aoife Kelly to Wexford?
For as long as he can. Sorry, Declan. I was just saying you're dying to keep us here for as long as you can this evening.
As always.
There's a lot of, we'll talk about this next week, but...
That's always the way it goes, Jess. You get used to it after a while. These are long pods that people drive for. That's no good to anybody. Look, last topic, we'll finish it. Eileen, how do Shamrock Rovers lose Aoife Kelly to Wexford?
She wanted to transfer to Wexford, Declan. She said, that purple kit is lovely. I'd love to play with Kylie Murphy, Carlo's finest. I'm going to go down to Wexford. Why not? No, look, Aoife Kelly, I think, is actually from Carlo. So like Wexford train in Carlo, so maybe something like that could make a difference. It's a huge loss for Rovers. And to be fair to Shamrock Rovers, because I always give out about them, they obviously brought in contracts for their players, and there has been issues with players trying to leave and they couldn't. So fair play to Shamrock Rovers, because that's a lesson for players again in the league. Just because there's a contract put in front of you, I wouldn't be in a big rush to sign it, because you're suddenly tied in there maybe for a couple of years. But that's something that's worked out for Shamrock Rovers, because they've got transfer fees for players going to the UK and stuff. So as I said, that's a plus for them. But like, yeah, Aoife Kelly it's a really big loss, I think. But their loss is Wexford's game.
Yeah, look, as we said, those will be the subjects for next week, really, I guess. Is there anything else either of you guys need to get off your chest before we wrap it up?
No.
Okay, that was very definitive. Very on point. So
I said we gave Jess as a Cork accent, so like we were trying to balance out the lack of Cork accents, and now she's been talking to us for an hour and a half, and she has.
Now
I
can't stop saying, you know.
Yes. Next week, Shauna Cook, we're coming for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Well, look, at least if Sean is here next week, there's a Shelburne game to review, so that would be interesting. Look, as always, thanks to everybody for listening. We will be back every week for the foreseeable future. It's brilliant that it worked out this way, because there was 5 of us at 6 o'clock, and the whole point of putting the panel together was we could have 3 for 5. 2 had to drop out. So that left it with the 3 of us. So look, as the A-team used to say, it's nice when a plan comes together. Until next week, adios, amigos.
Adios.
Adios.
Viva las Damas! Viva! Viva!